Sabbath. Does anyone remember what that means? We have an idea, right? It's a time that God instituted for rest. He said, because I, who the Lord, rested on the seventh day of creation, after everything I had made, I rested and I declared that it was good. So you too should rest. And no one in your household should work, none of your animals should work, everyone should rest. Which is a good thing, rest, right? We do need it. There are societies who have said, well, you work around the clock, and that means you'll be more productive if you never take a break. It's been proven not to be true. Because your productivity diminishes without breaks. Your brain power stops functioning properly. Your muscles get tired. Even elite athletes have to take days off between to rest. Rest is a good idea. But there were these Sabbath controversies, even before Jesus stuck his toe in there, right? Saying, what does it mean then to take a Sabbath? God says, don't work. What constitutes work? And here you see they've taken it down to you can't walk very far. The disciples were rolling grain in their hands. They could eat stuff that was already prepared, but they weren't supposed to prepare anything to eat on the Sabbath, is the way that they had decided this worked. Because of certain things God did during the exile. It said, don't work on this day. Gather what you need the day before and eat it there'll be enough, right? When the manna was provided. They said, rubbing the grain, which takes the hull off, right? The prickly bits, was too much work. They were breaking the law by rolling the grain in their hands to get the chaff off and eating it. Religious law. They took the law of God and went way past it, didn't they? But there were these controversies. What do you do on the Sabbath? And they have these many examples of discussions of if your animal falls into a pit, are you allowed to retrieve them? And they've decided because the beast, I think, you can check me on this, because the beast is not capable of thinking, you can pull the beast out if you have a rope with you. If a human falls into the pit, if you have a rope with you, fine, you can let it down and they can pull themselves out. If you don't have a rope with you, it's too much work to go back and collect it. They have to wait till the next day. And then you can go do the work on a day that you're supposed to do work. These are the controversies that are going on at this time in these circles. And so that's why Jesus asks these questions. So first of all, it's, are you allowed to do anything on the Sabbath? And Jesus says, David, you remember David, the greatest king of Israel? He took the bread of the presence when he and his men were starving. And he shared it out and they all ate and it kept them going. Did David sin in this? He broke the law. But you say it's okay because he needed it in this instance. There are reasons to break this religious law. It says the Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath. And if we stopped there, what would the lesson be about who Jesus is and what we as his disciples are supposed to do? I can do whatever I want on the Sabbath. Right? That's often how we read this. The Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath. Jesus says, I can do anything I want. But when you follow that and continue down that road, what happens? When I can do whatever I want, it tends not to be for my neighbor. It tends to only be about me. And then he continues. On another Sabbath, the same controversy comes up, and they're watching him now because they know he's already broken the rules. And he's been going around the region and healing people. So this man comes with a crippled hand. And he asked Jesus. Actually, I don't think he was just there. He hasn't actually asked Jesus. But they all know that Jesus heals. And so they're watching him going, is he going to break the law? What is Jesus going to do? Is he going to refuse this guy? And then we can say, ha, he doesn't heal. He's not capable of that. He doesn't have enough heart to do that. Or is he going to heal and break the law once again to not do work? And it says Jesus knew it was on their hearts and asked them this question. Is it lawful on the Sabbath to do good or to do harm, to save life or to destroy it? What is the purpose of the Sabbath? If the Sabbath is just for doing whatever he wants, that's not good enough in this instant. He said it's not for doing harm. It's for doing good, for saving life. And then he demonstrates that saving life by telling the man to stretch out his hand and healing him. Jesus calls us over and over to do what is right, in what is healing, to seek human well-being. Right? That's the purpose of the Sabbath, is to seek well-being of our lives and our hearts, yes, but also the hearts and lives of those around us. And even the animals in our care. Right? He says, make sure your ox and your donkey also rest. Give them a day of rest. The purpose over and over is to heal. And then we have this story tacked on here. The continuation. After this, he goes to pray and then appoints the apostles. And we've already gotten the clue that Jesus knows people's hearts and what's going on in them, right? Yet he still appoints all 12 of the apostles that he calls, even Judas Iscariot, who would betray him. You know, Jesus could have said, no, Judas, I know what you're going to do. I don't want you following me very closely. Couldn't he? But he doesn't. Judas has a purpose for all the days that he's there learning from Jesus. And he also serves a purpose when he betrays the Lord. It's his choice to do that. And how he deals with what God has given him. We have a choice. How do we deal with what God has given us? Are we all about doing things only for ourselves? And honestly, frequently, our answer is yes, right? We put ourselves first because it's what we are instinctive about. Self-preservation. Sometimes we put others first because that's what we've been taught, to the extent that we don't preserve ourselves or our families. That is harmful in its own way. Or we don't let ourselves stop and take a break. We don't commit that day or that hour to the Lord. Say, Lord, I trust you. It's like, honestly, I think sometimes my insomnia is I'm not allowing myself to give all my troubles over to the Lord. It's a struggle sometimes. Go, no, I need to worry about this, and I need to stay up and stress about it. But does that do anything other than rob me of sleep? No. My stressing about stuff isn't doing anything unless I do something productive with it, which is to give those stresses, those concerns, those prayer requests to God, who does something with them. The concerns, when I get a late night prayer request, I can stress about it or I can pray about it. It doesn't always take all of that away, but it makes a big difference. To remind ourselves, and I find it helps me to remind myself that God is bigger than my problems. It's bigger than the world's problems. And we can give those things to the Lord and trust him to do something about it. He also tells us to act and not act. Right? Tells us to take rest, to take times of renewal so that we can go again. He tells us to act for the well-being of the other, not just ourselves. And I think that's where we tend to struggle the most. Do we trust the Lord with providing for us if we give to someone else? Do we trust the Lord to take a rest when we feel like we have to be running from dawn to dusk every day and beyond? He wants us to trust him to provide what we need physically, spiritually, emotionally, and to provide for this world that we are in, to provide for our families, our neighbors, our nation, and those that we do not know. In all that we do, let us follow the Lord's example in putting this question first. Are we doing harm or are we healing? It was a simple test I was taught in history with every action in the news, but also a test of myself. Is my action, who is benefiting from this and who is being harmed? If there's no one being harmed, great, then I can benefit. But if what I'm benefiting from is harming another, I need to review my actions and rethink my actions. And that's hard to do because we are so trained by society to put ourselves first. God doesn't see it that way. He wants this relationship restored, and he wants this relationship restored. And everything is for the well-being of humanity, the well-being of our neighbor, the well-being of our relationship with God. That we are called to rest on the Sabbath, yes, for our well-being, for the well-being of those around us so we don't snap at them, so that we get rest, but also for our neighbor, to not ignore them when things are going ill just because it's the day of rest. It's easy to put up rules and to make even this its own rule. But let us all turn first to the Lord and say, Lord, what do you want in this situation? Because often Jesus strips it down to the heart of things. It's not about technicalities. It's about what is the intent? What is God's intent? What is our intent? And ultimately, putting others first, even the ones who were enemies. It says, while we were still enemies, Christ died for us. This led Jesus to the cross, the Lord of the Sabbath, for the well-being of others, to bring life. Willingly gave his life for our sake. For the sake of the world, he gave his life, that we might live. That all who put their trust in him would find life and life eternal. And this is good news. He wants you to find rest and healing and hope in this Lord, the giver of life, who gave his life for us.